Investor Watch with James Ulrich. I'm your host, James, and today we'll be diving into the high innovation sector of psilocybin. The magic mushroom, or its key ingredient, psilocybin, is one of the leading drugs in the modern wave of psychedelic research. Alongside the high-profile Phase 2 trial results from Compass Pathways, a handful of other studies are progressing, including Usona Institute and TheraPsil. Other psilocybin-focused startups such as Mindset Pharma and Delic Labs are doing a variety of preclinical work developing proprietary analog compounds and delivery methods. And a few early IPOs like Atai and Compass have triggered high interest in this sector. The policy landscape is evolving as activists are looking to put a psilocybin legislation initiative on the California November 2022 ballot after a similar but broader bill passed the Senate but then stalled out in the Assembly. A ballot measure installed the Oregon Psilocybin Office, which plans to make licenses available starting in January 2023. And a separate Oregon initiative deprioritized enforcement of personal use of small amounts of street drugs, including psilocybin. House Bill 1802 in Texas undertakes studies to evaluate psilocybin and MDMA as treatment for veterans' PTSD. And in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been open to changing the legal status of psilocybin. Some other startups with investor interest, like Mindset, Cygen, and Untitled Psychedelics, are focused more so on production than clinical trials. Most of them claim patent filings, but receiving an actual patent can take years. Cygen announced that it is building Canada's first dedicated psychedelics manufacturing facility, while Untitled Psychedelics is building an integrated complex for both production and wellness centers. So, who trains the trip guide? Psilocybin will be administered at Monash University Brain Park in Australia to 72 future psychedelic facilitators, led by private investigator Paul Ignaitsky. Braxia Scientific Corp just announced the completion of their training program, led by Dr. Roger McIntyre. It includes a practicum, hands-on, with 4 cases of psilocybin-assisted therapy with group supervision. Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, announced a program, Certificate in Psychedelic-Assisted Therapies, with an optional, legal psychedelic retreat in the Netherlands. Diamond Therapeutics is undertaking a psilocybin dose scaling and safety trial with 80 participants. The trial will be run by Dr. Isabella Zato of Biopharma. Usona Institute is still recruiting for 100 participants in 9 sites across the United States for a Phase 2 trial of psilocybin to treat major depressive disorder. Numinus will commence a Phase 1 study of its proprietary compound, Sabina RX, in Vancouver, with 14 participants, led by Dr. Devin Christie. Filament Health will compare 3 different forms of psilocybin and psilocin across 2 separate trials led by private investigator Dr. Joshua Woolley, featuring, quote, the most rigorous trial design employed to date, unquote. Mitocin is planning multiple trials, including a study on psilocybin for smoking cessation in partnership with Johns Hopkins, led by Matthew Johnson. Also, Mitocin is planning a Phase 2A trial focusing on PTSD in veterans, EMS, and frontline workers, as well as a microdose study led by private investigator David Arizzo. TheraPsil is aiming to help end-of-life patients with compassionate access to psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy. Nova Mentis is taking on Fragile X treatment, neuroinflammatory conditions, obesity, diabetes, and autism spectrum disorder, led by Dr. Marvin Hausman. Dr. Alan Kozakowski is leading Bright Minds in targeting epilepsy and touts multiple 5-HT2A receptor products in its pipeline. To curb your enthusiasm, most of the startups in this sector are burning cash, not making it. This is because they are running on investor money. The business model seems dubious. Therapy sessions with magic substances are supposed to replace lifetime dependencies on prescription SSRIs or opioids or other drugs. If so, where does this money come from? Decrim nature activists are already wary of these startups lobbying to open state-by-state markets while remaining as gatekeepers once legality is in its place. But an informal gray market is out ahead of the startups listed above. Reportedly, psilocybin is already sold openly in parts of Oakland and at some marijuana conferences. Small-scale, low-profile operations are popping up in Denver and elsewhere, mimicking the co-ops from the Prop 215 period for California medical marijuana. You can also get it online, but the Decrim style of measures in place only make room for personal use, not commerce. So how many of the startups listed on the TSX will still abide by local laws? Can control of IP, monopolization of data experts, data exclusivities, and mimicking natural compounds molecularly return tens or hundreds of millions? Or will exits into the hands of big pharma get early venture investors the 10x returns they seek? You might see a regulated psychedelics ecosystem in about 5 to 10 years, maybe even on a national level. So it's buyer beware for now. But the real question is, to patent or not to patent? The same decrim stance that gives pathways for these drugs to be legalized can actually be the same argument that stalls out the regulation of commerce for these said drugs. And since the drug is already being molecularly altered in some instances, who can say that it is covered in the first place? For Investor Watch, this is James Ark, and I'll see you in the next episode.